Hey, I'm golf broadcaster Matt Adams. The updated and expanded second edition of my book, The Golf Round I'll Never Forget, Golf's Biggest Stars Recall Their Finest Moments, is now available. Readers can expect to march with Arnie's Army at the 1960 U.S. Open, relive Jack Nicklaus's remarkable 1986 Masters win, and be amazed by the Tiger Slam. The Golf Round I'll Never Forget, Golf's Biggest Stars Recall Their Finest Moments. Pick it up where fine books are sold, including BarnesandNoble.com and Amazon.com.
This day in sports history. Hey, and welcome to another edition of This Day in Sports History. It's May 30th, and on this day in 1973, it was the completion of an Indianapolis 500, marred by horrific crashes and the loss of life. May 30th, 1973 was a Wednesday, which is not the typical day the Indianapolis 500 is run on. The race started on Monday the 28th after a 4-hour rain delay but lasted only 18 seconds. A wreck after the drop of the green flag started in row 6. The car of David Salt Walther veered sharply to the right and went airborne into the catch fence. Walther's car began spewing fuel and caught fire. Debris from his race car, the fence along the front stretch, and the heat of the fire caused several injuries among the spectators along the front stretch. The crash broke one of the metal poles holding the fence. If Walther's car had broken through that, it would have been catastrophic. As it was, his car landed upside down and spun to a rest several hundred feet from the crash site. Walther's legs can actually be seen sticking out from under the car in the race coverage from that day. The race was red flagged and Walther was pulled from his mangled car in critical condition. Most of the fuel in his car sprayed out and away from his car, allowing for a quick fire. But still, he suffered burns over 40% of his body. He spent the next 2.5 months in a burn hospital, but would come back to racing in 1974. Rain came a little later, washing out the rest of the track activities, and track officials needed time to repair the fence before racing could get back underway. The race was slated to restart from the beginning on Tuesday. In a heated drivers' meeting on Tuesday morning, drivers were upset at the slow speed of the pace car. 80 miles per hour on parade laps was too slow, they said. The drivers requested 100 mile per hour pace laps to keep cars from stacking up. When officials attempted to go green on Tuesday, more rain began to fall. The race was red flagged once again and eventually rescheduled to Wednesday, the 30th. More tragedy was on the horizon. After another rain delay that lasted 5 hours, the sun came out and the cars took the track. Many of the drivers were thinking they should just pack up and head on to the next race in Milwaukee. But instead, at 2:10 p.m., the green flag dropped and the race was underway. In the first 56 laps, it stayed mostly green, but there was an attrition of race cars. By lap 57, only 22 of the 33 cars that started were still running. Swede Savage had started on the second row and was among the leaders on the day. On lap 57, he pulled into pit road and got a full tank of 75 gallons of methanol and a new right rear tire. He raced his way back on the track and by lap 59 was running second behind Bobby Unser. Coming out of turn 4, Savage's car took a hard turn to the left and hit the inside concrete wall protecting the infield nearly head-on at full speed. His car split in two and burst into a fireball. The section of the car that Savage remained in was on fire, with Savage conscious but unable to extricate himself from his seat. As fire crews arrived and started spraying the fire extinguishers, the fire engulfed the entire car. At that same moment, another fire truck, rushing to the crash scene but driving the wrong way on pit road, hit 22-year-old crew member Armando Terran, tossing him into the air. While ABC's cameras were trained on the work being done on Savage's car, you can actually hear the screams from spectators reacting to the sight of Terran being hit on pit road and tossed into the air. Terran was transported to a local hospital, but he would die a few hours later. Savage was removed from his mangled machine, alive but in critical condition, with severe burns and fuel inhalation. After the two accident scenes were cleared, the race restarted at 4:16. More attrition resulted, with cars suffering myriad mechanical issues. Finally, at lap 101, the race was official. Only 11 of the 33 that started the race were still on the racetrack. On the 129th lap, rain began to fall again, and the race was put under caution for 4 laps with Gordon Johncock out front. The rain got heavier, and it was obvious to everybody that the race should just end. It was red flagged on lap 133, and Johncock declared the winner. Swede Savage was the teammate of Johncock, and after a muted celebration in Victory Lane, Johncock visited with Savage in the hospital. 33 days later, Savage would die in the hospital due to complications to his injuries suffered on this day in 1973. Several rules were changed and track improvements were completed for the following year's edition. First, while there had not been a rule against emergency vehicles going the opposite direction on pit road in '73, that rule was changed to make it so all vehicles had to travel the same way on pit road. Changes were made to the catch fence and inside retaining wall, pit road was widened, and the official starter and flag waver track official location was moved to a stand above the racetrack at the start-finish line, as opposed to being track level on the inside of the track. In 1982, Johncock would win his second Indy 500 on this day, this one going the distance. Gordon struggled with his race car about 2/3 of the way through the 200 laps, but then was able to get it to respond again, and he went from 4th place to 2nd behind Rick Mears. After a pit stop with Johncock beating Mears out by several seconds, he assumed the lead. With 13 laps to go, Gordon had an 11-second lead, but at that point his car started to become difficult to handle again. His left rear tire was overheating, and it made it tough to keep it from wanting to go into the outside wall. Mears, on the other hand, was on a rail, cutting the lead to just 4.5 seconds with 5 to go. As the cars came by the finish line for the final lap, the two cars were nearly even, with Mears attempting a pass, but he couldn't make it stick, and Johncock pulled back in front. Calling the action that day for ABC was Jim McKay.
Not quite over. Johncock still with the lead.
Here it comes
Headed
again.
for the finish line. He's still closing.
It's too late now. You only got to pray. Look at that.
Here you see them. Mears, can he make a move at the finish? He's making a move. No, not quite. Gordon Johncock has won the Indianapolis 500. He won it by less than a car length.
At the time, it was the closest finish in Indy 500 history. It now stands 6th. For Johncock, it was his second and final Indy 500 win. One other racing story for today. On this day in 1976, Janet Guthrie became the first woman to compete in a NASCAR event when she lined up with the good old boys in the Coca-Cola 600. Now, if you remember the May 22nd edition, you'll recall that she became the first woman to qualify and line up for the Indianapolis 500 in 1977. So this was a year before, and she was invited to race in the event by Charlotte Motor Speedway GM Humpy Wheeler after she didn't qualify for the Indy 500 race. The 600 is the longest race on the NASCAR circuit, and there were many who A, believed women couldn't and shouldn't be driving at all, and B, could not handle the long distances. But Guthrie started 27th next to Bill Elliott and was able to move up through the field and finish 15th, completing 379 of the 400 laps. Only 2 cars finished on the lead lap, race winner David Pearson and second place Richard Petty. Also on this day in 1976, it was the final round of the inaugural Memorial Golf Tournament at Muirfield Village in Dublin, Ohio. This was a Jack Nicklaus designed course and was Jack's tournament that he had put together. Roger Maltbie and Hale Irwin were tied after 72 holes, and for the first time on the PGA Tour, a 3-hole playoff was used to decide the winner. The pair was still tied after the second hole of the playoff, and it looked like Hale Irwin was in good shape to win on the third after Maltbie hooked his approach shot to the green, but then something weird happened. The ball, curving hard left, hit a green side stake holding the gallery rope in place and ricocheted back onto the green. That shot led to a 2-putt par to equal Irwin, and the two went to the 4th in a now sudden death playoff. Maltbie rolled in a 15-foot birdie putt on the 4th extra hole to win the first Memorial Tournament. And time now for today's Non-Sports Did You Know? In the U.S. Constitution, Pennsylvania is spelled incorrectly, with only one N in pen. That's all for today. I'll have more tomorrow on This Day in Sports History. This has been an original Thrive Suite production.
Hey there, sports history fan. This is Arnie Chapman, a.k.a. the Football History Dude, and I hope that you enjoyed this recent episode presented by the Sports History Network and were able to learn some good old-fashioned sports history knowledge nuggets. I started the Sports History Network back in 2020 with the mission to help podcasters find a community of like-minded sports history nerds, as well as helping aspiring podcasters to start their own shows. We have a little bit over 30 shows on the network right now covering all sorts of sports history, but as far as I'm concerned, we're just at the toothpick in the ocean moment, that can't even figure it out because there's so much more coming. We wanted to create the ultimate headquarters for sports yesteryear, starting with Podcast Network and our website, but we're going to continue to move into other mediums as well. And here's the cool part, because we want you to be part of our team. So if you're interested in starting your own podcast, or maybe being a guest on one of our shows, or who knows, maybe even writing an article for us over on the website. Seriously, all you gotta do is reach out to us on the contact page over at sportshistorynetwork.com. You can be as technologically savvy as a Neanderthal tapping on a stone trying to figure out this whole hieroglyphics thing back in the day. Again, it doesn't matter, because even if you don't understand the whole podcast space, we have a production team that can pretty much help you out with doing everything. All you gotta do, head over to sportshistorynetwork.com, head to the contact page, fill it out. That message goes right to me, and I'll reach out to you as soon as I can. But for now, dude, I'm through if you're through.